Hello, it's Ross from Human Connection. We're here to talk about authenticity, hope, and human connection. Our subject today, it's about empowerment for women and the security of women in the cities. And the best person we have to talk about that today is Kathryn Travers. Kathryn, nice to meet you.
Nice to see you, Denny. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yes, I'm so happy. So I know you have a long journey in, even at your age, you're still quite young, of empowering women in Canada and through the world. And you travel a lot. Anyway, so my first question is going to be, what happened to you in childhood for you to be so motivated to help women?
It's a good question. Thank you for that. And I guess it's interesting too, because some people can point to one specific moment in their lives where things then changed and they reacted a certain way. I think for me it was much more subtle than that. So I came from a family, I have two younger brothers, and my father was always better able to connect with them, and he was never able to connect with me because I was a girl. And so I internalized a lot of that. So even as a young child, I would go outside with my brothers and with my father, and I would take my shirt off and wear a tool belt and really kind of be the tomboy. And my best friends were guys and stuff. And so I really went for that kind of wanting to connect with my father. And so for a long time, I actually rejected the girl in me.
Okay.
And so I think that it's kind of a longer journey of getting into contact with that and trying to overcome it in different ways that led me to working on women's issues.
So that would say, because we all have trauma in our childhood. Some are really like, some are not like. So for you, it was not a huge trauma, but there was the little girl, there was a frustration. I could not communicate with her dad. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there wasn't a particular moment. Mm-hmm. It was more protracted, if you will, and sustained over time.
Okay.
And then I think it shifted again, and my parents got divorced when I was about 13. And so my father left. And my mother was left in a very vulnerable place at the time. And she had a hard time kind of being the rock for myself and for my brothers. So I assumed that role a lot in my family as well.
That's when you became, okay.
Yeah, because you have to, and I was the oldest, and so I fulfilled a lot of that role. And so that's also a different relationship with masculinity and femininity and different parent roles and things like this. Yeah.
Okay. So at what age you really got that wake-up call and you said, I'm going to work for women. I'm going to work to give strength and empowerment for women?
So I can't point to an age specifically, and what's interesting is that I never did women's studies or anything like that. I studied many other different things, but I always took all the courses available to me that dealt with women's issues. And so I always had an inherent interest in the subject, Yes. And then for me, I think what was the turning point was I was asked to by an organization that I ended up being the executive director of, called Women in Cities International. I was asked to join the team. So coming straight out of my master's, they had literally put me into a proposal. So I was really lucky to get a job. And the position was working with 4 different groups of women across Canada. And it was women who experienced particular vulnerabilities. So women living with disabilities, elderly women, new immigrant women, and urban Aboriginal women and First Nations.
Urban?
Aboriginal, so First Nations, who are living in urban centers.
Okay.
And I feel like it was easier for me to enter that project and to be an advocate for people who obviously experience many different issues that I, with all my privilege, don't have to deal with in a day-to-day. And it was in advocating for them and creating that space for them to know each other and to exchange that I really realized that in advocating for them, I was also advocating for myself and for all other women, and that we are all connected and that we can't move forward without bringing all of us together with all of our complexities.
Yes.
And so it was really, that became a turning point for me, where I said, man, even in Canada, you know, a country where we feel that we have advanced so much, we are so far from equal still, and it feels like every step forward is 2 steps back constantly. And it's that's a constant motivation to keep moving and to keep working for this.
Yeah, and I found that but already you had in you a lot of generosity, because you were aware that even through your little problem, you know, of a child, you already young wanted to help all these other women who did not have the chance that you had to be born in, like, you know, still in a family, and you did not miss anything, and so on. Okay. So then you take this job, you're happy with it, and why did they send you to travel? Like, I know you went to Iraq, you went to Kenya, you went to India. Where did you go? Why did you go there?
Yeah, so I've had such a great privilege of going to so many different countries. And I guess I'm often brought in, sometimes it's a longer term project, sometimes it's just to work as a consultant. And there's 2 things that we always try and do, and it's an approach to the work that I've always had that I think is really critical to moving the needle forward, and it's with working with different actors. So first of all, we always work with the women on the ground, right, who we call grassroots women. So the women in communities who are living the realities of the hardship, right, but who are also having to still take care of their families and make things run, right? I mean, so these women are just doing things anyways, right? So working with them to give them tools to better be able to advocate for the services they need, for the public spaces they need, for transportation systems that work for them, and to be able to engage with government officials. And then the second part of the work is working with government to understand, why do you need to listen to women? Why do you need their voices around the table? Why do you need to hear what they're going to have to say? And here are the different issues related to urban planning or governance structures or transportation systems that they're going to come to you with, you know, and they're going to show you the data on why it's an issue for them, on the challenges they face, on the safety issues, health issues that they face. And they're going to come up with concrete solutions that work for them. And by working on both streams, it creates not only empowerment for the local women, but the government, it builds their capacity to understand why they need to engage with them.
Of course. But in a country, so you were in Baghdad, I guess, or in a big city of each country you went, huh?
Yeah, I was in big cities. I wasn't in Baghdad because the security situation at the time was very complex. I was in Erbil, so we had different groups come from other parts of the country up to Erbil, which is kind of near Kurdistan, the Kurdish region. Which was interesting as well, you know, because then it's a very particular context of obviously conflict and post-conflict. And it was really innovative, the kind of work that we were doing, because it was the first time that we looked at post-conflict and really humanitarian crises, but with a longer term perspective, you know, of how do we build in empowerment, you know, and we're not just immediately responding, but when we say, okay, you're gonna have a ration of electricity, is it in the hours that you need, because that's when you're feeding your children, or when you have to do your laundry, or when you have to work? Does it work for people? If we say, okay, your water collection is going to be over here, is it safe for you to get there? Do the hours of it conflict with, for example, school schedules and things like that, you know, and just making really obvious connections sometimes, you know, that if you're not living that in the day-to-day, and that's really an expertise that women have, is the day-to-day life, you know, ignoring that creates just ongoing problems and new problems, you know, just because you come in and think that sometimes, you know, you come from a country like Canada, we have so much, and we have the answers, but we don't, because every context is very different.
It's a different culture. But tell me, in this, like in this country, when you go and talk to the government, which for them, I believe women, you know, it's really, it's not like Canada. So in this government, do you have resistance to for them to want to work and facilitate the life of women, or no?
I mean, even in countries like Iraq, for example, there's still women's departments and things like this. You know, there's an awareness that's there, and I think by making things very practical for people to understand, like in planning a transportation system, for example, why it's important to consider that women have care responsibilities when you plan the system. It's not just a man who leaves the house to go to work and comes back, right? And just letting them know that there's whole theories about this and experiments that other cities have done to work better for people can draw a lot of inspiration and drive them to want to improve their own cities. And so in the case of Iraq, for example, there was a big park in Erbil, right? And the women there said, it's a great park and we love it, but lately there's a lot of cases of harassment and we don't feel so safe. And so we did a tool called the Women's Safety Audit Tool, where they went with a checklist and they looked at the physical infrastructure of the park and said, okay, there's not maybe a security at the entrance, or some areas don't have light. Maybe some areas don't have any programming in them, so no one goes there. So if I'm there by myself, I don't feel safe. All of these kinds of things. Maybe there's not proper signage to know how to get out of the park if you need to. And so they went and piloted this tool there that I trained them on, and then afterward met with the management and the city management and the park management and implemented a bunch of recommendations right away. So the response was really open and very welcoming, you know. And the thing is that if you make it work for women, who are really half the population, but often the ones who are doing all the care work still too, then it's really working for the majority of the population. So you can't ignore them being around the table. But it makes the government's job actually more effective.
And in this government, like in Kenya or India, do they have women working there?
Yes. Everywhere has women, of course.
Oh, they have women working
everywhere,
in the office and that. So do you work more with women in these offices or men do it? It's a mix of...
It's usually, especially with government, and in some countries more than others, there's definitely men also who are part of it, you know? And so the training that we do is adapted to different contexts. And sometimes, you know, when you're talking about very sensitive issues like sexual violence, for example, you want to have a safe space where it's only women, right? And so we make sure to have that, you know. But then there's other times where, of course, you're working with men, and sometimes they just don't even understand. Even here, you know, when you say, okay, if you look around the room, like how many women walk with, you know, their keys in their hand like a weapon, or have earbuds in, but they're not actually listening to music. It's just to convey that you don't want to engage, you know, and you don't want to make eye contact with the wrong person who then might want to take it too far, right? So we all have as women safety strategies. Maybe you take a taxi at night instead of the metro or bus. You know, we all do these things inherently. Men don't. So sometimes they don't even know that women do, right? So women know that women do this, but men don't always. And so by bringing them around the table, they better understand women's experiences and then get motivated also to want to be a champion for change and a real ally to women.
And in Montreal, let's go back to Montreal now. And in Montreal, do you? Because we're quite advanced. I think with one of the most advanced in maybe in like you know, the other country like I would say Sweden and all that. But Canada, I mean, women seems to have power. And you work with the Aboriginal women. So what do you do to them? Because to protect them, what do you do for them? You know?
I mean, it looks different everywhere, you know, and what people need looks different everywhere too, right? So of course, it always has to be something that's going to be useful for people. You don't want to take people's time for no reason, you know. Culturally sensitive as well, and so that sometimes means that there's particular cultural practices that maybe you integrate into your work, like you know, doing sage at the beginning of a meeting, or doing a circle where everyone hold hands and take a minute at the beginning. These are things that are practiced. Do they do that? The autochthon people, exactly. The First Nations do that here,
like in Mexico, you know, when you go to Mexico, you do sage. I do even sage myself.
Exactly. So there's things like that you can integrate into practices for sure.
Well, and now that you do such a beautiful work for women, would you say that influenced your life in your with your family, your husband and your kid? I mean, do you think that changed your dynamic in your own relation with your family?
You know, here's the thing with working on women's issues. It's a kind of thing that once you open your eyes to it, you can't close them again. You see it everywhere. The subtle messages that people say, the bad jokes that people have and stuff, you know? And so I'm really fortunate to have a husband who's really supportive of me, and interested in learning.
Yeah.
Now, he was also raised with a lot of strong females around him as well, you know. But when we would have, you know, press conferences or public meetings here, he always came and he would literally sit in the front row. He would lift his hand up and he would ask questions and actually be interested, you know.
So good.
So
yeah.
he was really great, you know.
Yeah.
And then obviously with my son, you know, we're trying to teach him, like give him language to advocate for rights and for gender equality and things.
Women.
Exactly. And so, little anecdote. So I felt I had a real feminist win with him the other day when it was the weekend and he was complaining and he said, "Mommy, you worked all day. You weren't supposed to work this weekend." I said, "I didn't touch my computer. What do you mean I worked this weekend?" And he said, "You were cleaning the house today and that is work." And I was like, yes, my feminist
good.
son, that is work. It is. And you have to recognize it like that.
Yes.
You know?
Oh.
So we're doing our best to transmit the good values to the next generation.
Fantastic. So now, as always, we want to talk, you know, to finish the work for people who are listening to us and can learn something. What is the message you want to leave to the women, even to the men actually, who are listening to us?
So the message for the men is that gender equality it's not like pie. Like if you give a bit, it's not like you have less, you know. And so it really does work for everyone in a much better way for you to be a part of the solution and to create space to ask questions and to participate in making sure that we are making advances in the right way. And for the women, it's important to know that you're not the only one who's going through discrimination or who's experienced sexual violence or sexual harassment or whatever it is, who maybe have less access to opportunities. Your lived experience counts, and that is a form of expertise, and your voice is needed. And so use that voice, use your power, connect with other women, and you are making the change already. Continue to do it. The systems will get there to support you.
Great. And as you say, it's all about human connection. It's
Absolutely.
so strong, you know, because it's a human connection, show us like we have open heart and generosity, and we you know, we're aware of it, and I think we're going through a fantastic change since the last 5-10 years in these topics, and I think it's great. So thank you very much, Kathryn. And people who are listening to us and would have any question or anything to ask, we'll be there to answer you. Have a great day.